In today's video, we're taking a look at the possibility of the New York Rangers preparing for a potential Patrick Kane trade later in the season. Plus, we have some trade talk as well around the Anaheim Ducks and the Montreal Canadiens. We have more news from the NHL waiver wire today. Plenty of injury updates and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at here today. First up, we get more news from the NHL waiver wire. We have Bellows, who was on waivers yesterday with the Philadelphia Flyers. He has indeed cleared, and he's already been assigned to their American Hockey League affiliate in Lehigh Valley. So Bellows is kind of fallen out of the NHL's favor here. Obviously, was a long-time New York Islander, never materialized, had opportunities, could never seize them. Ended up in Philly through the waiver wire. Now he's in their minor league system. Things do not look good for the former fairly high draft pick here. I think time might be running out slowly on Bellows for NHL opportunities. We also saw another player on waivers today, and it's Lightning defenseman Philippe Myers. Myers is a player who I was a little bit surprised that Lightning acquired, but at the same time when they did in the offseason, I thought he was going to be acquired for the purpose of a buyout, because the way his contract is structured here, they actually would have gotten a cap credit for his buyout because he was still in RFA status. Would have been a 1/3 buyout. They actually would have benefited from it when they acquired him from Nashville, which was done after the Predators acquired. Of course, that was through the Ryan McDonough deal. But they decided that they were going to keep him. He was going to be a part of their team, and he really hasn't had a solid role this year. He's only appeared in 11 games. Hasn't played in a couple of weeks now. I think November 21st was the last time he's played. He's never played more than around 10, 11 minutes a night. Never really found a solid spot in the Lightning lineup for John Cooper. So certainly a player who they're kind of utilizing as a spare part right now. Now, of course, I think there's a pretty good chance that he may not be picked up just because of the contract, but at the same time, teams might be looking at this as potential opportunity. I know a team like Ottawa jumps to mind because they're a team that's been looking for a right shot D. I know he's not the prototypical type of what they want, but he's 6'5". He's huge. He doesn't make a ton of money, and he does have some term on his contract, but it's not super long term. They might be, and plus, like I said, if they do a buyout like next offseason, they could but possibly get a cap credit from this. So really, I don't know why they wouldn't take a chance, but we'll see if anybody else does. The big lanky defenseman's had a hard time sticking in a solid spot. I know he came up through the Flyers after being undrafted. Finally started to get some NHL action. Ended up going to Nashville, and of course now is in Tampa. So we'll see if he remains there in Tampa, goes down to the minors, or what happens next. But Myers is an interesting big right shot defenseman on waivers here for now. On to some injury updates. We got some good news and bad news out of Columbus today. For one, Patrick Laine made a faster than expected return to their lineup, so he's certainly playing for them this evening. By the time this makes it to YouTube, the game will be late into it or possibly done. But Laine's returned, scored a goal early in that game, which was good to see, so that was good news. The long-term effect of winger Jake Voracek, not necessarily the greatest. The Jackets provided some injury updates today, including Voracek, and apparently he's been out with a concussion, and because of the numerous injuries of that nature he suffered over the years, doctors have been quite cautious and reluctant to let him return, so they've advised him that it's probably best to take some extra time here, and certainly want to be careful with this. So it's no real clear timeline on when he'll be back, but obviously when you're dealing with that type of nature of an injury, it's really difficult to kind of pinpoint an exact return. But we'll see. At least we know, have a little bit more idea now what Voracek's going through, and it does make sense with the history there that they take their time. Voracek's name's actually popped up. I've seen some articles suggesting that he could be a player that might be traded, and he may be willing and wanting a fresh start again. Of course, he put in his time in Columbus after getting traded back from the Flyers. This is his second year there. I don't know, though, but after going through a substantial injury like this and missing significant time, it might be quite challenging and not the easiest kind of deal to pull off, especially where he's making a bigger salary. So we'll see what happens, but I doubt we'll see a trade with Voracek here anytime soon. Some updates out of Detroit. Tyler Bertuzzi, again, having surgery. Don't quite clear exactly what the surgery was, but he's going to be out for about 6 weeks, according to head coach Derek Lalonde. So that's his second longer-term injury of the season for Detroit. So that's certainly a cause for concern. It's certainly been a tale of Bertuzzi's young careers. He's often injured and has missed substantial time. So we'll see how that impacts his next contract here as well. The Vancouver Canucks unfortunately lost goalie Thatcher Demko to injury. He ended up having to be helped off the ice last night. It did look a little bit concerning for sure. So certainly a lower body injury in the leg, knee area. And right now, after undergoing further tests today, they're saying that he's going to be out for approximately 6 weeks. But obviously, those types of injuries could be a little longer. I wouldn't suspect too much longer. They've called up Colin Delia right now, so they'll run probably with Spencer Martin being the main goalie for some time. And we'll see where things go. I know there's certainly been some talk around Vancouver from local media, including Thomas Drance and a few others, suggesting that with Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin kind of having issues with the Canucks structure and the way that Boudreau coaches, they may not be shocked if they see management team trade a player that maybe he's fond of to kind of adjust the lineup changes that he's able to make to kind of force his hand a little bit. So we'll see. Obviously, the Canucks have been, a heavily rumored team for some time after getting off to a bad losing streak early in the season and setting themselves back. Well, Maple Leafs forward Kelly Jarnkrok's going to be out for about 2+ weeks. Could be a little bit longer. You just never know because it is a groin injury, which can be difficult to predict and peg exactly how long it's going to be. But, of course, Jarnkrok often plays pretty solid bottom 6 minutes for the Leafs, including a lot of time on the PK and some face-offs. So that's certainly going to be an impact for them. So along with Vancouver, not only did they have the Demko situation, but they've also made an announcement yesterday as well, later yesterday, that Roberto Luongo is going to be going into the Ring of Honor next year, which was, I guess in some ways a pleasant surprise, in some ways very confusing. Of course, Roberto Luongo is going into the Hall of Fame. Right now, of course, he's now a Hall of Famer along with Daniel and Henrik Sedin, Daniel Alfredsson, this year's class. But why only the Ring of Honor? Why wouldn't they do a jersey retirement? I'm not kind of surprised by that. I think a lot of other people are as well, especially with the way the team has gone right now. You've seen a lot of chants of fire Bruce. You've seen a lot of Bruce, there it is. You've seen conflicts, you could say, between coaching and management. An inconsistent up and down season. They had an opportunity to kind of do something right here and create a good positive outlook for next year. And to me, I think they got this wrong. We'll see if things change, but I'm surprised that it's just a Ring of Honor and not a jersey retirement type of situation for Lou, who certainly, obviously had a tremendous career, and a lot of those big moments came during his time as a Vancouver Canuck. Now, of course, this is also the anniversary, too, way back. Patrick Waugh, in his final days as a Montreal Canadien, when they were absolutely shelled by the Detroit Red Wings, when Mario Tremblay left him in for way too many goals. I remember at one point in the game, he had made a save, and the fans actually cheered him for it, and he had his hands up celebrating the save. And then, of course, he comes off the ice as well. Go straight to the president of the team, Ron Corey, and tells him that he's played his last game as a Canadian and he wants to be traded. And of course, 4 days later, he shipped off to become a member of the Colorado Avalanche. That's certainly one of the bigger moments in hockey history. One of the big legends, of course, to have multiple, teams that he's played with for an extended time to have Stanley Cup victories and real solid parts of his career. But certainly a big moment for Patrick Waugh in Montreal all those years ago. Of course, last night we also saw Steven Stamkos pick up point number 1,000, which is a big milestone for him personally. First Lightning player in franchise history to hit that personal accomplishment, which is also not super shocking considering it's a younger franchise from the early 90s. And, of course, they haven't had a ton of players like Stamkos play there for so long and be so efficient and productive. So certainly congratulations to Stamkos, the former first overall draft pick from his draft class. Of course, Stanley Cup champion multiple times over now. Certainly well-deserved accomplishment. Nice to see him hit that big-time personal goal. The Montreal Canadiens have also recalled Rem Pitlick on an emergency basis. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Pitlick longer term. I think this is mostly because we saw Mike Hoffman be placed on IR. Pitlick hopefully will get a chance to play here in the coming days, but he is a player that's come up in the NHL trade rumor mill. Of course, we've heard some recent talk about Sean Monahan as well. We'll see what happens with him later in the year. I know Sportsnet's Eric Engels seems pretty convinced that Monahan more than likely does be traded just because he's playing so well that he's going to be able to give them too good of a return that they'll not want to pass that up. But of course, Pitlick may not be anywhere near that. But if he can play like he did when he was first acquired off the waiver wire, Montreal might be able to get themselves some pretty decent value on a player that's certainly not had a great start to the season. So we'll see if they can get him into the lineup, put up some points, and maybe showcase that speed of his for a potential trade in the not too distant future. Now, of course, the Anaheim Ducks are another team as well. We should see a lot of activity out of in the trade front here in the coming weeks and months ahead. Probably nothing too quickly. A lot of these deals will be closer to the deadline, but they have multiple veteran defensemen that all seem to have pretty decent trade value and should all be able to fetch some sort of decent return to help the Ducks and Pat Verbeek with the rebuild. And of course, that includes veteran John Klingberg, who they signed to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Of course, that also likely includes a guy like Kevin Shattenkirk, who's coming up on an expiring contract, as well as a new defenseman to the team, Nathan Beaulieu. Beaulieu could be a good addition as a number 7-8 guy on a playoff roster for a cheap return. Probably looking at a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick, something of that nature. When it comes to Klingberg, if they retain half the salary, get him down to $7 million down to $3.5 million, then that certainly creates a good opportunity for a lot of teams. For the longest time, Elliot Friedman's been convinced that the Oilers might be a team to watch on Klingberg. Only time will tell if his gut reaction there is accurate or not. But regardless of where he goes, I do expect there to be a fair bit of activity and interest around many of the Ducks defensemen going into the deadline later into the season. And of course, as I mentioned, could Patrick Kane be a New York Ranger before the deadline is all said and done? Of course, I know there's a lot of articles, a lot of discussion around the Rangers here. Of course, after trading Ryan Reeves not too long ago to the Minnesota Wild, that certainly creates a roster spot, knocks some salary cap off their commitments, and certainly makes things a little bit easier for them to manage down the road. There's some are convinced that that is the beginning of the Patrick Kane potential trade that we might see later on. As of right now, they have around $1.5 million in cap space, which would be equivalent to over $6.5 million at the deadline. So of course you got to remember they accrue cap space on a daily basis. So certainly the longer they can be out of LTIR and be in a positive cap situation, they can be accruing space and they can take on a contract at the deadline because it's all obviously projected out based on how many days left in the season and all that. So it's not exactly the same as it is at the beginning of the year. So you might be wondering, well, how can they afford that? So when you want to go into capfriendly.com, not only look at what they have for cap space now, but what is their deadline accessibility? And the Rangers have already get that accrued to a good amount. So certainly having the Reeves contract gone helps a lot with that. You take the Hawks taking back half that salary, and they have the space to do it at the deadline. They couldn't do it today, but they could do it then. Of course, the Rangers also have a lot of younger talent in picks that might be very intriguing to Chicago. I don't expect the return trade package to be huge by any means, given the fact that if Kane chooses the Rangers, he's going to be calling the shots. So I don't think the return will be as high as many Chicago fans might be hoping for. But Vitaly Kravtsov, who scored his first goal of the season tonight, maybe he gets moved. I know he's been a player that's been inconsistently used for Gerard Gallant. I do wonder what his future holds too, by the way. I know the Rangers haven't had the greatest start. They're certainly not exactly where they were hoping to be early in the season. They had a good run early on, but they've had some difficult times lately, and I've seen some Rangers fans wondering if we might see an early season coaching change. I mean, Gerard Gallant, to me, I'd be surprised if they do that. I don't think he's in as much trouble and hot water as some fans think he is. I know, but he seems to be, as much as he's a great coach, and certainly has had success everywhere he's been, he seems to have a short shelf life, and I do wonder if his tactics maybe just kind of lose the room after a short span. Like, it seems like he never lasts anywhere more than a couple years, and after a big, long playoff run last year, I know they're hoping to build on that. and maybe they will. We'll see. But I know there's some that think that if the team, is not doing well, and if they do have some inconsistent play and are looking like they might be in danger of dropping in the playoff race, that maybe Chris Drury, the GM, will make a move. Only time will tell, and we will see. But when it comes to Kane, the Rangers could offer up any kind of combination of their younger players. Maybe they move a player like a Kakko or Lafreniere or a Kravtsov or Philip Hedl or any of those guys, Zach Jones. They have all kinds of young players. Now, I don't think they would probably prefer to move, certain ones of them. I'm not sure exactly what they'd be opposed to. But looking at the stats for a lot of their young guys like Lafreniere and Kakko and Hedl, statistically speaking, they haven't really made a ton of progress. So I do wonder what they might do. Would they be willing to move one of those, big young pieces for a real shot at a cup? I don't know. I mean, at the same time, maybe they move a first rounder and a guy like Kravtsov or Jones or something to that effect. That might be more preferable for New York and Chris Drury, and it might be something that they have a better chance to do. But like I said, I don't think that the Patrick Kane trade return will turn out to be quite as big as a lot of people think, given the fact that he's calling the shots. He's kind of creating, the fact that he's got the leverage, the team doesn't. I don't know if they're going to get as much as some are hoping for. So we will see what happens. But I do agree with the sentiment that Kane to the Rangers makes a lot of sense. I think adding him to their top six would be absolutely deadly. He would make a great return with Artemi Panarin. They had great chemistry before. Why not do it again? I think he'd be a great piece to complement this group and possibly get them over the hump to be a much more, solid Stanley Cup contender. So only time will tell if that's where it goes. I know there's a few other teams, but it continues to be rumored here. It's still early. We don't know where Kane wants to go, if anywheres, and he will, like I said, call those shots, and we'll have to wait for later into the season before we really know further where things might go. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Again, of course, if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe because now, again, if you're new to this channel, not my normal recording home studio. That won't be for the next couple of weeks. We're currently away in Florida visiting Walt Disney World's resort here in Orlando, Florida. So that's why you see Mickey Mouse here behind me. And you'll see some other scenery through it the coming days and weeks ahead while I'm down here visiting. So thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.